Hello, everybody. I hope you're well. I am. I am on my porch. We are on my porch. And we're going to do a little bit of classroom time. Essentially, this will be a series, where I will be reading the Trauma-Informed Care Manual off of my school classroom. If you are a member by the free membership, which in this moment anyone is free to join, you will have access to the posts in the community board after joining. So if you don't see any posts, it's because they are gatekept. And this course that we're going to be going through together is found again in the classroom tab. Not again, maybe I didn't tell you, but I've mentioned the word classroom, and so you'll find this in the classroom tab under Trauma-Informed Care Manual. So if you click on it, and if it's already purchased, then go ahead and I guess open it up with me or just listen along, right? But yeah, this series is essentially for me to give y'all free value without burning out so much, because I essentially feel like I'm always learning from not only others in the world but myself, and I enjoy looking back on projects that I do and taking the courses that I create for my clients and you. Excuse me. Because it's part of being integral, right? I can't only dish out info and not really reflect on it. And this is my way of reflecting. So let's get into it. I am skipping over the dedication page, so we're not going into that. We're diving straight into the first module. This first module is broken up into 6 sections, I see, and it essentially is all regarding the foundations of trauma-informed care, because it is not just one-dimensional, right? It's very complex. It can be very complex. So anyway, also I want to mention, please grab a drink, grab your snack if you have one. I can't snack. I wish I could talk and eat at the same time without being well, I was gonna say a Viking, but that sounds really cool. Excuse me. But yeah, grab your drink, grab your Benjamin. Brief history of TIC in healthcare. Trauma-informed care being TIC, right? Before the 1980s, this this is where the medical model kind of started. Before the 1980s, healthcare systems largely followed a medical model focused on treating physical symptoms without much consideration for the emotional or psychological needs of patients. Trauma was not widely understood as a critical factor affecting a person's overall health or healing process. So this was not. What do you mean? You were basically invalidated. Is what I can imagine. Individuals seeking care for physical injuries or ailments were typically treated without any integration of psychological support, and healthcare professionals often overlooked the potential for past trauma to impact a patient's well being. So, this is telling me that what I imagine in my mind when I think about this is like an assembly line, right? It's like a doll being put together. Here you get your head squished on, and here you do this, and here, and by the end of it, you should be perfect and operating the way they want you to, right? So it seems like a very cookie cutter way of treating people, um, to where it just becomes inconsiderate, right? Which is what they said here. Well, I wrote this, but anyway. In the 1980s, there was the early recognition of trauma and its impact, right? Excuse me. In the 1980s, there was a shift as psychologists and medical professionals began recognizing the link between mental health and physical health. The American Psychiatric Association, APA, published the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-3, in 1980, which included post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as a formal diagnosis, acknowledging the profound and long-lasting impact of trauma on mental health. So they're getting it. As a result, healthcare providers began to pay more attention to the psychological aspects of patient care, particularly with veterans returning from the Vietnam War who were experiencing PTSD symptoms. In the 1990s, this marked a critical period in understanding the effects of trauma across a wider spectrum of individuals, not just war veterans. Dr. Judith Herman, in her 1992 book Trauma and Recovery, further expanded the understanding of trauma's widespread effects on individuals, emphasizing that trauma could affect survivors of domestic violence, sexual abuse, child abuse, and other forms of interpersonal violence. Around this time, healthcare systems began to acknowledge that trauma could have lifelong consequences on physical and mental health, leading to more patient-centered approaches. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, began to engage in work related to trauma-informed care in the 1990s. SAMHSA started recognizing the need for trauma-sensitive services, particularly for individuals with substance use disorders, addicts in one word. Not judging, just simplifying. The early 2000s saw the formalization of trauma-informed care as a concept in various healthcare settings. Woohoo, finally. In 2001, SAMHSA published TIP 57, Trauma-Informed Care in Behavioral Health Services, a pivotal document that set the groundwork for what would become the trauma-informed framework. This publication laid out key principles for creating trauma-sensitive environments, especially in behavioral health services. Beautiful. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network, NCTSN, was established in 2000, which further promoted the integration of trauma-informed approaches in healthcare, especially related to children and families. By the 2010s, the principles of TIC began to permeate a broader range of healthcare settings, including primary care, mental health services, substance abuse treatment, and hospitals. More healthcare systems and practitioners began adopting the trauma-informed principles across their care models, recognizing that trauma impacts both the mind and body, and that healing requires addressing both. The 6 key principles of TIC are safety, trustworthiness, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, and cultural, historical, and gender sensitivity. These became widely accepted. SAMHSA's 2014 to 2015 TIC in Behavioral Health Services publication provided further guidance for practitioners, encouraging comprehensive trauma training for clinicians across all levels of care. This sounds like nurses and, sorry, I just blinked. In 2016, the Institute of Medicine published a report, Clinician's Guide to Trauma-Informed Care, which further entrenched TIC as a best practice in healthcare settings. Okay, best practice in healthcare settings to be integrating trauma-informed care. As of the 2020s, which we are in the middle of, trauma-informed care is recognized not only as best practice, but increasingly as standard practice. Hello. In many healthcare settings, especially those serving population with high trauma exposure, such as low-income communities, victims of domestic violence, people with substance use disorders, and marginalized groups. Okay. A growing recognition has emerged that trauma is not only linked to mental health disorders, but also a range of physical health problems and emotional, let's not forget, including chronic pain, heart disease, diabetes, and other conditions, inflammation, leading to more integrated care models that blend physical, mental, and emotional health. Yes? Hospitals, primary care providers, and mental health clinics are increasingly prioritizing trauma-sensitive training for their staff and implementing TIC policies in everything from intake processes to patient interactions, treatment planning, and discharge planning. The whole shebang, okay? Research also increasingly supports the effectiveness of TIC in improving patient outcomes, such as increased patient engagement, better adherence to treatment plans, and reduced stress and anxiety during medical procedures. Yeah, I think so. Going over the key milestones of TIC's healthcare evolution. In the 1980s, PTSD diagnosis and the growing awareness of trauma's long-term effects on mental health. In the 1990s, we had early principles of TIC, especially in mental health and substance abuse treatments. In the 2000s, we had the formalization of TIC as an approach with SAMHSA and NCTSN publishing key frameworks. working with the children and families, right? In the 2010s, we had the widespread adoption of TIC principles across diverse healthcare sectors and formal training for healthcare providers, as well as, just those with vulnerable states of being. 2020s, we had a change or an upgrade to where this is now a standard, right, in healthcare systems globally, enhancing both physical and mental health outcomes as well as emotional. Let's get the Trinity going. So for me personally, when I first, so this is the end of the first module. We're done reading. So if you need to skedaddle out of class, you're dismissed. But if you want to stay for the, for the chat, I personally was introduced to the formal teachings of trauma-informed care while I was working in a women's shelter. And while I'm grateful that I did this training at all while I was there, the teacher kind of was lame. I'm sorry. The execution was a little it was lame, and it was not engaging. It kind of sucked. For me anyway. I'm sorry. And so if you my bad. If you were with me at work and you know what the fuck training I'm talking about, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. It was lame. But the content, the principles that were being presented were not. They are absolutely something. The principles that are talked about in trauma-informed care, that are the foundations, rather, the pillars. The pillars of trauma-informed care are extremely important. So I really wanted to create. I wanted to put fun in the TIC, right? I don't want people to get bored with one another's needs. And it's not to say that we can't get tired and we need to always be, saving others or helping. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that let's, rediscover the depth, really, right, of caring for one another's needs. And I know this is barely like touching on the first module, but when we get more into it, recognizing, actually this is going to be in module, this will be module 3 because I recently added a new module, and so you know what, guys, I'll change that later just so I can kind of chat with y'all for a bit right now. But for the time being, there are 2 module 2s. But later we'll get into recognizing symptoms. Not symptoms, I'm sorry. Recognizing micro expressions that people show when they are in distress. And this varies from person to person. And even within the person, it varies, not day to day, but it just change is the only constant, right? And so while we try to recognize patterns and such, there is a necessity to stay flexible and adaptable to the changes that are inevitable. So, yes. While we're, while we're on this, here I have a short um, explanation on why TIC matters. There are 4 bullet points that are essentially pretty straightforward. I will be adding more as I study more and I, just yeah. Anyway, better patient outcomes. By integration, by integration of the TIC, patients are more likely to engage in the treatment, report improved mental and physical health, and experience reduced re traumatization, right? So, because sometimes a patient will go somewhere in hopes of feeling better, but fuck, it turns out they feel worse because they just had an experience that made the condition worse. So, increased trust is another reason why TIC matters. Patients with a history of trauma may have a hard time trusting. Not may, they may have a hard time, not all the time, but they may have a hard time trusting healthcare providers. So TIC builds trust through safety, empathy, and consistency. So this is kind of what I wanted to get to. Hold on. I had a thought and it just like totally slipped. But yeah, I was talking about, not getting bored with each other's needs and being able to observe those micro expressions about their needs. That, people show us all the time what they need with their body language and their behaviors, right? It's not only verbal. Matter of fact, a lot of people have a hard time asking for help, and so yeah. Holistic healing. TIC addresses both the mind and body. Understanding that trauma impacts overall health and recovery, this creates a more integrated, comprehensive approach to patient care. I also want to add, spirituality in there. We'll get to that another time when I update this. Preventing further harm. In a healthcare setting, the failure to acknowledge trauma can lead to re traumatization, mistrust, and avoidance of care. So it can really just derail someone's journey. TIC creates an environment where patients can heal rather than be harmed. You know what? Let's get into unrecognized trauma effects in adults. So, unrecognized trauma is trauma that is not acknowledged, understood, or addressed. And this can really have a profound and far reaching impact on both individuals and those around them. The effects can be subtle at first, but can worsen over time, influencing every aspect of a person's life, including their health, relationships, and behavior, and their financial health. Let's break down the impact of unrecognized trauma on individuals and those around them. So, the impact on individuals is that they start seeing physical health issues, right? So, chronic pain and illnesses start to arise. They can manifest physically. Unresolved trauma can manifest physically, leading to chronic conditions like headaches, back pain, stomach problems, and other kind of like quote unquote unexplained physical ailments. The body holds trauma in the tissues, and its effects can be seen in the form of chronic conditions like fibromyalgia, autoimmune disorders, or cardiovascular diseases. So, um, yes. Weakened immune systems. Sorry, I'm just like at telepathy. Anyway, trauma can cause long term activation of the body's stress response systems, like the fight or flight response, which over time weakens the immune system and increases vulnerability to illness. Yeah. So, stress is the number one killer for this reason. Sleep disorders. People with unrecognized trauma may experience insomnia, nightmares, or disturbed sleep patterns, which affect the overall health, right? The cognitive function and emotional well being of the person. We also have increased risk of substance abuse. People who haven't processed trauma often turn to substances like alcohol, drugs, or food to numb or escape their emotional pain, which can lead to addiction and other health issues. And this isn't always a tangible thing, right? This can also rather be addiction to the socializing, like going out all the time to not think about what the fuck is going on. So it can also be a behavior, not necessarily like an intake of a thing. The mental health challenges that can impact an individual are many. Anxiety and depression are often manifestations of the unaddressed trauma. These mental health challenges may be misinterpreted as simple stress or personality issues rather than symptoms of trauma, right? So some people can seem to just have a fucking attitude, but it's really that they're dysregulated and they need help. PTSD. Without recognition or treatment, trauma can develop into PTSD, where individuals may re experience traumatic events through flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, or nightmares. Emotional dysregulation. Individuals may struggle to manage their emotions, feeling overwhelmed by seemingly minor triggers. This can lead to mood swings, irritability, or outbursts that feel disproportionate to the situation, right? So sometimes whatever, we might bring home something like takeout and we didn't get the right soda or whatever, and an outburst happens from the person. It's like, ugh. It's not necessarily out of nowhere. Um, Definitely a a strung out nervous system. Difficulty with trust and relationships. Unrecognized trauma can create an inability to trust others, like we mentioned before, leading to attachment issues and difficulty forming healthy relationships. People may become emotionally withdrawn or overly dependent on others. So, this is telling me that my hyper independence is not a good thing. It's a trauma response. Um, but yeah, attachment issues, control issues, right? We want to know everything and all the details all the time, and you simply can't. It's exhausting. Hypervigilance. Maybe I'm sorry. Many trauma survivors become hypervigilant or on edge all the time, constantly anticipating danger or harm, even in safe environments. This state of this state of hypervigilance can be mentally exhausting, just like I said. Impaired cognitive functioning is something else that is an impact on individuals. Difficulty concentrating, right? Trauma can impair cognitive functions such as memory, attention span, and concentration. This often manifests as brain fog, trouble focusing, or forgetfulness, especially when individuals are experiencing trauma triggers. So, yes, somebody can, in fact, forget their own name when they are in high distress. So, if you're ever around someone and you're trying to help them and you're asking their name or something and they don't answer, don't fucking flip out on them. They are in freeze mode and they need time. Decision making challenges also arise. Unaddressed trauma can interfere with decision making, making individuals more prone to impulsive decisions, risk taking behaviors, or difficulties in thinking things through carefully. So they are also prone to manipulation, okay, or peer pressure. Negative self perception. Trauma survivors may develop a low self esteem or low self worth, leading them to blame themselves for the trauma or feel inadequate, unworthy, or powerless. Very common. And, you know, just very common, not a judgment. More behavioral effects on the individual are avoidance and isolation. To avoid dealing with trauma, coming up against it, or facing it, individuals may withdraw from social situations. They will or may isolate themselves and avoid activities or people that may trigger memories of past traumas. This isolation often exacerbates mental health problems. So, yeah. Um, Anger and aggression. Uh, Not funny, but some people with unrecognized trauma may struggle to regulate their anger, which can lead to outbursts, conflict, or aggressive behavior that harms relationships and can lead to physical confrontations, even with a wall. I have a boxer's fracture from an outburst. But I'm thankful for it because it led me to my 3-year journey of EMDR, leading me to the fantastic star I am today. Risky behavior. People who haven't addressed their trauma may engage in unhealthy coping mechanisms such as reckless driving, unsafe sex, or self harm, often as a way to regain control or temporarily numb their emotions. Difficulty with boundaries. Unaddressed trauma can result in blurred or unhealthy boundaries in relationships where individuals may either overextend themselves or become excessively withdrawn, both of which can be damaging. Impact on those around them. So, strained relationships, right? Emotional distance is very common, and unacknowledged trauma can cause individuals to emotionally withdraw, which may create distance in relationships. Most of the time, it does. Whether with a partner, family members, or friends. This emotional distancing can leave others feeling confused, rejected, or unsupported. This also happens in the workplace. Mm. I'm not ashamed to say it, right? But like, I do emotionally distance myself at work because work is work, you know? And I just, you know, anyway, lack of trust. If trauma results in issues with trust, it can create barriers in both romantic relationship and family dynamics. the individual may misinterpret others' actions or feel threatened by normal interactions, creating an atmosphere of suspicion or tension. Again, this can also happen in the workplace. Codependency or emotional exhaustion. Those around a person with an unaddressed trauma may take on the caretaker role, trying to support them while being emotionally drained. Over time, this can create unhealthy codependent relationships or burnout. In a toxic codependency, the people around you will know that you are not well and will make it worse. So, tricky place to be. Number 2, difficulty in parenting and family dynamics. Parenting challenges. Individuals with unresolved trauma might struggle with parenting because their emotional wounds affect their ability to nurture or respond to their children's need in a healthy way. They may be overprotective, controlling, emotionally unavailable, or overly permissive, enabling. The impact on children is that, the survivors of, I'm sorry, child survivors of trauma may experience emotional neglect, inconsistent care, or exposures to unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? Children who grow up in a trauma impacted environment may be more vulnerable to developing their own emotional or behavioral problems. They are actually more vulnerable. They are more vulnerable. Doesn't mean that they'll become this, no, but generational trauma. Unresolved trauma can be passed down through generations, as a child might learn maladaptive coping behaviors, lack emotional support, or inherit trauma related beliefs and patterns. And this is also actually genetic, okay? Because very genetic. Another time. The workplace impact. Impaired performance is the obvious one, I feel. Individuals dealing with unrecognized trauma might struggle with workplace performance due to issues like lack of focus, decreased productivity, and emotional fatigue. This can lead to missed deadlines and conflicts with coworkers or job dissatisfaction. I think the fucking mosquitoes are biting him. I'm sorry, honey. Interpersonal conflicts. Trauma survivors may unintentionally create conflict in the workplace through misunderstandings, emotional outbursts, or difficulty with authority figures. This may strain team dynamics or cause tension between colleagues. Very likely. Absenteeism. Physical and mental health challenges linked to unaddressed trauma may result in frequent absenteeism or burnout, right? Further impacting productivity and relationship at work. So, not showing up, calling out. Social and community impact. Social isolation, like we talked about before. Individuals may withdraw from social interactions due to trauma. They may isolate themselves from friends, neighbors, or their communities, leading to a lack of social support because they're not there, right? This can perpetuate feelings of loneliness and alienation. Community disconnection. Survivors may feel disconnected from their communities, which diminishes their sense of belonging and reduces the potential for positive community engagement or support, right? Because how do they know that you need something if they're not around to see it or you don't speak on it? Increased vulnerability to exploitation. was waiting for that ambulance to go by. Still hear it. We were at increased vulnerability to exploitation. Individuals who have experienced trauma may be more vulnerable to exploitation or manipulation by others due to weakened emotional boundaries or trust issues, putting them at risk for further harm. And so we are closing with the ripple effect. Well, this isn't the last thing, it's one of them. Anyway, the impact of unrecognized trauma can often let me go slow. The impact of unrecognized trauma often creates a ripple effect where the consequences of one person's unresolved trauma affect multiple areas of their life, as well as the lives of those they interact with, right? These effects can extend across family dynamics, work environments, friendships, and communities, contributing to ongoing patterns of dysfunction, alienation, and emotional distress. So the need for recognition and support is real. The key to healing trauma for individuals and those around them is recognition, support, and intervention. Trauma-informed care offers a path forward by providing individuals with the space and resources to understand their trauma and begin to heal, while also creating environments that recognize the signs of trauma and support people in ways that are empathetic, safe, and healing. All done. We will pick back up next time. And we'll get into the second half of module number 1, the foundations of trauma-informed care. And we'll dive straight into unrecognized trauma effects in children. Very important topic. Everyone starts here. Excuse me. Very important. Very important. And I don't care if you never want children. Low battery. Yeah, I don't care if you never want children. You do have a responsibility to the children of the world. The responsibility of the 6 pillars of trauma-informed care. Okay. I will see you next time. Oh my gosh, you guys love being on camera? You ladies did so good. Yeah? Did you have so much fun? Yeah? You're so beautiful. You are so beautiful. Obsessed. I haven't named her yet. Do you guys name your plants? She's the mama up here, and then over under in this pot right here is her babies. And she is so big. She's so big. She has a new leaf coming in. Beautiful. You guys want to see her? She wants to show herself. She wants to show you her new baby. You see that? Oh my gosh, look at her. She's so beautiful. Look how big her trunk is. Is it her trunk or her stem? Is it a stem or a trunk? Because these girlies are big old tweez. But I guess not trees because they don't have bork, bork, bork. Okay, guys. We'll see you next time.